Welcome back to another episode of No Shame with Shane, where the takes have no lies, no bias, but most importantly, no shame. Now, looking at this trade deadline, the Eagles honestly made arguably the most impactful trades out of anyone in the NFL. Howie Roseman made arguably the most impactful trades out of any other GM in the NFL. Like, this was a championship caliber team making championship level moves. The Eagles needed more depth at corner and DB. What does Howie Roseman do? He brings in Michael Carter and brings in Jaire Alexander. He brings in Michael Carter, who can start at the opposite corner position, who can start at slot corner, and who can also play safety. He brings in Jaire Alexander, who obviously at his best is an elite corner in the NFL. But even if he's not an elite, but even if he doesn't play at an elite level per se, him and Michael Carter are both upgrades, huge upgrades from what we've been seeing at that cornerback 2 position from Kelee Ringo and Adoree Jackson. What else does Howie Roseman do? The Eagles need reinforcements in the pass rush. Howie Roseman brings in one of the most talented pass rushers in the NFL in Jaelan Phillips. Super talented, and he's shown a guy who is shown capable of playing at a high level in the past. Now, no other team in the NFL, or very few teams in the NFL that were active during this trade deadline period, made as nearly impactful trades as what Howie Roseman made for the Eagles. The Eagles arguably made the most impactful trades ahead of the trade deadline because they filled needs that the Eagles desperately needed. like they filled positions, they filled roles that the Eagles desperately needed and that were honestly weaknesses on this team. The Eagles reinforced their cornerback depth and reinforced the pass rush with more than capable players. Honestly, almost no other team in the NFL that were active during this trade deadline period made trades that were as impactful as what the Eagles made. Like, you look at the Cowboys trading for Quinnen Williams, one of the most interesting trades of the whole entire trade deadline. Quinnen Williams to the Cowboys is not nearly as impactful as Jaelan Phillips, Jaire Alexander, and Michael Carter to the Eagles, because Quinnen Williams is not enough to turn the Cowboys season around defensively. Like, Quinnen Williams, great all-around player, good run stopper, good pass rusher. A Pro Bowl caliber athlete, Pro Bowl caliber defensive tackle. Jaelan Phillips is not enough to turn the Cowboys season around. Quinnen Williams is not enough to make that defense good. Like, the Cowboys defense, they were trash before Quinnen Williams got there. They're going to be trash after. They're going to be trash. They were trash for the first half of the season. They're going to continue being trash for the second half of the season. Quinnen Williams going to the Cowboys does not move the needle in any way in terms of the Cowboys being a playoff caliber team. Yes, the offense has its bright spots, has been shaky recently, but Quinnen Williams going to the Cowboys does not make them any more of a playoff team than they were before the deadline. You look at another interesting trade, Sauce Gardner going to the Colts. Sauce Gardner going to the Colts is not nearly as impactful as Howie Roseman bringing in Jaelan Phillips, Michael Carter, and Jaire Alexander. Because Sauce Gardner, this is a little, the Colts, I think, are more of a playoff team, obviously, than the Cowboys in terms of, especially after this trade. Bringing in Sauce Gardner, it arguably gives the Colts one of the best secondaries in the NFL, arguably the best secondary. You already have Kenny Moore, you have Case Bynum, you have Mekhi Blackmon. You're adding Sauce Gardner to that group. You know, a group that is already, as a defense, one of the better run stop defenses in the NFL. But reinforcing that defense, reinforcing that secondary, saying that Sauce Gardner moves the needle for the Colts is assuming that Daniel Jones is a good enough quarterback to win playoff games. Like, saying Sauce Gardner makes the Colts a Super Bowl favorite coming out of the AFC is assuming that Daniel Jones is not having a fluke season and is a quarterback that can win in the postseason with what he has on offense. So I'm not gonna say Sauce Gardner going to the Colts is as impactful as the trades and acquisitions that the Eagles made ahead of the trade deadline, because it really depends on Daniel Jones. Like we don't know Daniel Jones is really that guy, is going to be that guy come the end of December and come January, let alone even making it to February. So the Colts, by default, you can't say the Colts had a more impactful trade than the Eagles, because reinforcing the defense, it doesn't make Daniel Jones any more of a capable quarterback in the playoffs than what he already was. Now, if they had made some sort of addition to the offense, if they did something like what the Seahawks did and maybe brought a Jacoby Myers to the offense, before he was dealt to the Jags. If they made a similar addition, I would feel a little differently. But bolstering the defense, it does not mean it doesn't mean necessarily that Daniel Jones. It doesn't make Daniel Jones more likely of winning a playoff game. Like now, I think the only trade that really is on the level of the trades the Eagles made ahead of the trade deadline are the Seahawks acquiring Rashid Shaheed. Like, I think the Seahawks acquiring Rashid Shaheed is the only trade that is as impactful as the trades that Howie Roseman made in terms of bringing Jalen Phillips, Jair Alexander, and Michael Carter to the city, because of the situation that Seattle has right now. They have bringing in Rashid Shaheed. It gives the Seahawks a top 3 receiver trio in the NFL, joining, of course, Jackson Smith-Njigba, who is an Offensive Player of the Year candidate, and Cooper Kupp, who is a Super Bowl MVP. You also, the Seahawks are also a team that has arguably the best defense in the NFL this year. An elite defense at stopping the run, an elite defense in coverage. That also has a Defensive Player of the Year candidate at its helm in Leonard Williams. But then you also have a quarterback in Sam Darnold who is more likely to perform at a higher level in the playoffs than Daniel Jones. Like we can say right now, this is a possible fluke season for Daniel Jones because we've never seen him play at this level. Sam Darnold, we've at least seen him play at this level before. He's coming off we saw Sam Darnold do this last season with the Vikings. We saw Sam Darnold win. We saw Sam Darnold win at a high rate just a season ago in Minnesota in an entirely different situation. I, for one, didn't think he would be able to replicate what he did last year in what was a more favorable situation. I didn't think he would be able to replicate that this year. He proves me wrong. He is not only replicating what he did last year, but he is on par and on track to top what he did last year, statistically and record-wise. So because the Seahawks have a quarterback like Sam Darnold who is tallying another consecutive high caliber season, because they have an explosive offense already, because they have an elite defense already at all levels, because the Seahawks have or had everything that they had, then adding a guy like Rashid Shaheed to that mix, I think that makes the Rashid Shaheed trade really the only trade ahead of the trade deadline that is as impactful as the trades that the Eagles made ahead of the trade deadline. I think the Seahawks acquiring Rashid Shaheed is the only trade ahead of this deadline that you can say is as impactful as the trades Howie Roseman made ahead of the deadline. And honestly, if we're looking at Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones, Sam Darnold definitely deserves more trust right now than Daniel Jones, because we have not seen Daniel Jones perform at this level ever. We've seen him have a good season, but the last time Daniel Jones played good football was 4 years ago. Sam Darnold did this last year. Sam Darnold did what we're seeing now last year. If there's any quarterback out of those two that deserve the benefit of the doubt, it's Sam Darnold, which is what helps makes this Rashid Shaheed trade as impactful as it is, as opposed to the Sauce Gardner trade, because Daniel Jones is more likely to be in a fluke season this year as opposed to Sam Darnold being in a fluke season, because he just did this last year. We've seen Sam Darnold recently play at a high caliber level. We haven't seen that from Daniel Jones. Now, looking at the trades that the Eagles made, Howie Roseman continues to just fill the needs of what the Eagles need on the roster. Like, these were great acquisitions by this front office. I mean, you look at Michael Carter. The Eagles made a great pickup in trading for Michael Carter. Michael Carter joining this defense, it gives Vic Fangio different options in the secondary because of what Michael Carter can do. Michael Carter is a guy that can start at the opposite corner position. He can play slot corner. He can play inside or outside, but he can also play at that nickel safety position. He can also play at that nickelback position. So it not only gives Vic Fangio options, it also frees up Cooper DeJean in the scheme as well. Vic Fangio now having two Swiss Army knives in MC and Cooper DeJean, it gives Vic Fangio more options and more room for creativity within the scheme of the defense. Like, the last thing Vic Fangio needed, arguably the best defensive coordinator in the NFL, the last thing that guy needed was two multi-purpose guys in the secondary. The last thing Vic Fangio needed was two Swiss Army knives at that DB spot. So bringing in a guy like Michael Carter, it allows Vic Fangio to do many different things, because both of those guys are interchangeable now. Cooper DeJean and MC are interchangeable now. Now, MC obviously not as I think a high caliber DB as Cooper DeJean has shown to be in this year and in his rookie season. But both of these guys are interchangeable now, because now you can play MC at that outside corner position. You can play him at the slot position. Which means you can keep Cooper DeJean at that roaming nickelback position, or you can switch him. You can have Cooper DeJean, who might be a better coverage guy than MC, play at that opposite corner position, either inside or outside. And then you can have MC play at the nickelback position. Like, it just, having these two guys in this secondary gives Vic Fangio a plethora of different options in this scheme. Now, I look at these other acquisitions they made, these two other acquisitions Howie Roseman made, looking at Jaire Alexander and Jaelan Phillips. Honestly, this system in Philly could be an opportunity for Jaire and Jaelan to redeem their careers. Like, this situation that they have come into with the Eagles is an opportunity for them to turn their careers around. Like, if you look at both of these guys, both Jaire Alexander and Jaelan Phillips have struggled with injuries. Both haven't played a full season since 2022. But when they were healthy, they were both breakout players. Jaire Alexander, obviously, arguably being the best cornerback in the NFL when he was healthy. Jaelan Phillips being one of the better pass rushers, one of the better edge rushers in the NFL when he was healthy. Like, both of these guys are used to being the best player on their team. Like this is honestly, this situation could be great for those two guys, because at their peaks, they were both breakout players. But just in the situation that they were in, it made them a little more susceptible to injury than what they would be in Philly. So honestly, being in Philly is an opportunity for both of these guys to redeem their careers. But in looking at these two guys, looking at Jaire Alexander and Jaelan Phillips, another reason why, like, another reason why Philly is an opportunity, being on this Eagles team is an opportunity for them to redeem their careers. When you look at Jaire Alexander and Jaelan Phillips, they're both used to being the best player on their teams, on their defenses rather. Jaire Alexander was the best player on that Packers defense. Jaelan Phillips was the best to second best player on that Miami defense. Jaire Alexander, now on this Eagles team, neither one of those guys will have as much responsibility as what they had in their previous situations. Neither one of those guys will have that same sort of weight to carry, that weight to bear, and as much pressure as they had in their prior situations. Neither one of those guys will have that sort of pressure as they will in their new roles on this Eagles team. Like Jaire Alexander won't have to guard the best receiver for a majority of the game on the Eagles. He won't have to guard the best receiver on the opposing team for a majority of the game, for a majority of the games on the Eagles. Jaelan Phillips won't see as many double teams as he had to put up with, won't have to put up with as many double teams as he had to put up with in Miami as he will in Philly. Like both of these guys will have less of a weight to carry in this defense, which could really help them have a strong sort of turnaround to their careers. Like honestly, playing in Philly could revitalize both of their careers in this scheme because of sort of the decreased weight load that they'll have to carry on this team. Like imagine what this defense could be with a healthy Jaire Alexander and a healthy Jaelan Phillips. Like imagine what this defense could be now that these guys don't have the weight to carry the load that they're used to having. Now that these guys don't have as much attention, won't have to put up with as much of attention from an offense. Like imagine what these guys could be like now that they are less susceptible to injury. Imagine what this defense could be like with a healthy Jaire Alexander and a healthy Jaelan Phillips. Like it's honestly a win-win situation. Like the Eagles defense gets two key positions that they really needed in a pass rusher and a corner. But Jaelan Phillips and Jaire Alexander, and coming to Philly, they also get a chance to redeem their careers by having a sort of condensed role than what they're used to, which really puts them in more of a position to succeed. Because they don't have as much responsibility, because Jaire Alexander is not coming in as the cornerback one, the guy who is going to have to, we're going to have to lean on to lock down an opposing offense's receiver one. Because Jaelan Phillips isn't coming in as the guy, as the elite best pass rusher on this Eagles team, a guy who is going to have to put up with a number of different adjustments from an O-line, a number of double teams thrown his way. Because these guys are coming into a situation where they don't have as much of a workload, as much of a weight to carry in this scheme, they're really in more of a position to succeed because of the condensed roles that they'll have on this defense. Being Eagles for these guys could really revitalize their whole career moving forward. Like, and honestly, I'm looking at Jaelan Phillips specifically. I'm really excited about Jaelan Phillips as an Eagle specifically. I'm really excited about Jaelan Phillips as an Eagle specifically. Like, I know Jaelan Phillips isn't coming in as an elite pass rusher in the NFL. He's not coming in as one of those elite guys in the NFL. But I do think Jaelan Phillips in this situation can be a problem. Like you look at Jaelan Phillips as an individual football player, his injuries are a concern. Having two back-to-back major injuries in the last two seasons, his career high in sacks is 8.5. He hasn't had close to that career high since his rookie year in 2022. But if you look at Jaelan Phillips in this scheme, Jaelan Phillips in this scheme could be a problem, can be a problem. Like Jaelan Phillips coming to the Eagles, he gets to reunite with his old defensive coordinator in Vic Fangio, which in the last time Vic Fangio was his coordinator, he had a breakout rookie year in 2021 with 8.5 sacks. He had a solid sophomore season. Right after that with 7 sacks. And he was on the verge of having a breakout year 3 before he got hurt with 6.5 sacks. Jaelan Phillips, before he got hurt in year 3, was on the verge of topping his career best in sacks. Jaelan Phillips was honestly on the verge of being a Defensive Player of the Year candidate in his 3rd year. Playing half of the games in the season, he was already 1 sack away from matching, or he was already 1 sack away from topping his sack totals from year 2. In half of the games played in the season, he was 2 sacks away from topping his career high from his rookie season. In half of the games played of that season in his 3rd year, he was on the verge of being a Defensive Player of the Year candidate with 6.5 sacks. And then, of course, he fell to injuries that year and the year after. But Jaelan Phillips is definitely capable of playing at a high level. Like, Jaelan Phillips, is not coming in as an elite guy, but Jaelan Phillips can be a problem in this scheme specifically. Because he's reuniting with Vic Fangio, but also because he's joining a talented D-line. Because of this specific D-line that he is joining with Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Jordan Davis, the depth behind those guys, because he's joining this specific D-line, Jaelan Phillips is more likely to succeed in this scheme specifically. Jaelan Phillips joining this D-line, Jaelan Phillips is never going to have to see a double team. Jaelan Phillips is never going to have to see a double team while playing on this D-line because he's playing on the same D-line as Jalen Carter. Jalen Carter is more likely to get a double team than anyone else on that D-line, which means Jaelan Phillips will have more one-on-one opportunities than what he had in Miami. Jaelan Phillips was used to putting up with double teams, putting up with chip blocks from running backs coming out of the backfield, with tight ends who might stay behind to get a shoulder on him. Jaelan Phillips is used to putting up with double teams in Miami. Jaelan Phillips won't have to see any double teams, hardly any double teams at all in Philly. And giving Jaelan Phillips in a game where he has little to no double teams and he just has a straight one-on-one for a majority of the game, you're putting one of the most talented pass rushers in the NFL in a position where he hardly has to see any double teams. You're putting one of the most talented pass rushers in a position where he gets a straight one-on-one matchup for a majority of the game. That's a big reason why Jaelan Phillips on this Eagles defense can be a huge problem for opposing offenses, because of the D-line that he's playing with. Offensive lines won't be able to afford to double team anyone on this D-line, especially Jaelan Phillips. Because if you double team Jaelan Phillips, you're now opening yourself up and making yourself susceptible to being blown up by Jalen Carter. You're making yourself susceptible to get exposed by Nolan Smith, who showed to be a closer in last year's postseason as an edge rusher. You're making yourself susceptible to being blown up by Jordan Davis. Like, offenses won't be able to afford to double team anyone on this D-line, let alone Jaelan Phillips. So Jaelan Phillips is going to have a lot more of an opportunity to shine as a pass rusher in this situation than what he had in Miami, which means Jaelan Phillips could honestly be more likely to shine the way he did his rookie season in Miami. His sophomore season in Miami, what he was on the verge of doing his 3rd year in Miami. Like, Jaelan Phillips is not coming in as an elite guy, but in this system specifically, on this D-line, in a Vic Fangio coach defense, Jaelan Phillips can definitely be a problem for opposing offenses. Can definitely be a problem. Like, Jaelan Phillips right now, like, the Eagles acquiring Jaelan Phillips is honestly an underrated move. It's an underrated move because it creates a huge problem for opposing offensive lines. Jaelan Phillips right now has shown, Jaelan Phillips is coming in not as an elite guy, but someone who has shown capable of playing at a high caliber level. He's coming into a situation where he'll have less double teams to put up with. And he's shown to be a guy that can take advantage of those situations. Right now, Jaelan Phillips is tied for 7th in total pressures right now in the NFL with 18. He has 3 total sacks on the season, which matches the amount of sacks from the Eagles edge rushers as an entire group, including Za'Darius Smith. Like, Jaelan Phillips right now has as many sacks as the entire edge rushing room for the Eagles have as a group, which includes Za'Darius Smith. So if you exclude Za'Darius Smith, if you only count the current edge rushers that the Eagles have, Jaelan Phillips has more sacks than all of the current Eagles edge rushers combined. There's no question Jaelan Phillips joining this Eagles D-line is a problem, not just for the rest of the NFC, but for the NFL, for the NFL as a whole. The Eagles acquiring Jaelan Phillips is not only a move for now, it's also a move for the playoffs. It's a move for the playoffs, and it's a move for the future as well, because he's only 26. Like, the Eagles adding Jaelan Phillips to this defense is a great move because it's a move for the now in terms of getting to the playoffs. It's a move for the playoffs, bringing in what could be a potential closer for this pass rush, but it's also a move for the future because of how young he is. A guy just entering his prime as a 26-year-old, a guy who is used to being the sort of best player on his unit, a guy who is used to wreaking havoc for opposing quarterbacks. Jaelan Phillips checks all the boxes for this Eagles defense. And honestly, we couldn't have picked up Jaelan Phillips at a better time than ahead of this Packers matchup. Like, looking at this Eagles-Packers matchup, I honestly feel like this is a clear W for the Eagles. Like I said, I don't think the Eagles are losing another game in this regular season, but they definitely aren't losing this game against the Packers, even with it being at Lambeau Stadium. But the main reason why I think the Eagles will beat the Packers is because I don't think Green Bay's defense will be as big of a factor as they have been in their previous games. Like, don't get me wrong, though. The Packers defense have the best defensive duo in the NFL right now in Micah Parsons and Rashawn Gary, combining for 14 total sacks. Micah Parsons obviously being a top 3 pass rusher total in the NFL. Rashawn Gary being one of the most underrated, if not the most underrated pass rusher in the NFL. I think looking at that duo specifically has not seen an offensive line as good as this Eagles offensive line. Looking at Micah Parsons and Rashawn Gary, the best defensive duo in the NFL right now, they have not seen an offensive line this season that is as good as this Eagles offensive line. They have not seen a better tackle duo than Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata. I think Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata are more than capable of isolating and containing Micah Parsons and Rashawn Gary. More than capable. Micah Parsons has 0 sacks against Jordan Mailata in his entire career and has only 1 sack against Lane Johnson. Micah Parsons has only 1 sack against Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata in his entire career. If there is any tackle duo that can contain this pass rush duo in Green Bay, it's Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata. That's going to be a big reason why the Eagles win this game, because Micah Parsons and Rashawn Gary won't have a lot of success in getting to Jalen Hurts and getting Jalen Hurts on the ground because of Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata. Like, and if this offensive line can contain this pass rush, if this offensive line can contain Micah Parsons and Rashawn Gary, it's going to be a lot easier for the Eagles offense to deal with this Packers defense. If the Eagles offensive line can contain Micah Parsons and Rashawn Gary, I don't think the Eagles will have a problem with torching this Packers secondary. I don't think this Eagles passing game, I don't think Jalen Hurts will have an issue beating this secondary with A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Jahan Dotson, and Dallas Goedert. With Micah Parsons and Rashawn Gary being neutralized in this matchup, there's not a lot this Packers defense will be able to do to have an answer for this Eagles offense. Like, I honestly feel like in this game, the Eagles are capable of beating the Packers through the run game and the passing game. You know, I think the Eagles are capable of doing either one. And if the Eagles now, if the Packers defense isn't able to be a factor in this game as much against the Eagles, and if it's solely up to Jordan Love for the Packers to get a win against the Eagles, the Packers are definitely losing. If the Eagles are able to neutralize this Packers defense by containing this pass rush duo of Micah Parsons and Rashawn Gary, and it's up to Jordan Love to match the Eagles offense shot for shot, the Packers are losing. The Packers are definitely losing because Jordan Love is not a good enough quarterback to match Jalen Hurts shot for shot in a shootout. Jordan Love is not a good enough quarterback where he is going to outplay Jalen Hurts in this primetime game on this primetime stage. Like, Jordan Love this season, he's only played one good defense so far, and that was the Browns. And in that game, the Packers lost 13-10. Jordan Love hasn't played any good defenses aside from the Browns leading up to this Eagles game. Jordan Love has only put up good numbers against the bad defenses. Jordan Love has only put up good numbers against defenses like the Cowboys, defenses like the Bengals, defenses like the Steelers this year. Jordan Love is not a good enough quarterback to match Jalen Hurts shot for shot, especially lined up against this reinforced Eagles defense that is going to have a fresh pass rush with Jalen Phillips, that is going to have a reinforced secondary with a Michael Carter more likely than a Jaire Alexander, or possibly Jaire Alexander, either one. If it's up to Jordan Love to win this game against the Eagles, the Packers are definitely losing this game. The Eagles are winning this game if it is up to Jordan Love having to outplay Jalen Hurts. Because Jordan Love is not going to do that. He's not going to do that. Jordan Love has only played good against bad defenses this season. He's only played good against the bad defenses this season. The only good defense that they saw this year was the Browns, and they lost 13-10. But after the Browns, Jordan Love will have good games against a Cowboys defense. He'll have good games against a Steelers defense, against a Bengals defense. But even against a defense that isn't good in the Panthers, which we just saw last week, Jordan Love was held completely scoreless until the fourth quarter against the Panthers. So if the Panthers can keep Jordan Love scoreless until the fourth quarter, what do you think this Eagles defense is going to be able to do to Jordan Love without Tucker Kraft? Like, there's no question this is going to be a dub for the Eagles. There's no question this is going to be a dub for the Eagles, not just because of their ability to, I believe, neutralize this Packers defense, but just off the simple fact that Jordan Love is not capable of outplaying Jalen Hurts and is not capable of putting up not capable of putting up high value numbers against an Eagles defense. But that's all we got for today's edition of No Shame with Shane. If you haven't already, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to all of our social media platforms. And I will be back later on with more shameless takes.